The damage caused by one of several airstrikes in the northwest province of Idlib. Survivors try to salvage what's left. Emergency crews combed the rubble to recover the body of a child. Other civilians were among the casualties in Idlib city.
In the afternoon, Idlib city was targeted by Sukhoi 23 jets. They hit the industrial area and al-Hal market. Most of those hurt have serious injuries.
In a nearby hospital, friends console a father grieving his son. A ceasefire, which started on Sunday, was shattered on Wednesday. When Syrian and Russian jets attacked Idlib city, as well as several rebel-held towns. The ceasefire was brokered by Turkey, which supports the rebels, and Russia, which backs the Syrian government's 9-month offensive. Fighters linked to al-Qaeda are the strongest forces in these areas, home to around 3 million civilians according to the UN. Close to 400,000 Syrians have been forced from their homes in Idlib in the past 10 weeks. The Kremlin says it's targeted rebels who've attacked civilian government-held areas in what's supposed to be a so-called de-escalation zone. Russia and Turkey are reported to have been negotiating the establishment of a secure zone for the displaced during the winter. And Russia has announced humanitarian corridors have already been established to allow people in Idlib to cross over into government-held territory. It's unclear how many have chosen to go. Katia, Lopez, Hodayan, Al Jazeera.
Now, the Turkish humanitarian organization IHH is based in Idlib, and it says in the past 2.5 months, nearly 400,000 Syrians have been forced from their homes, including 250,000 children. And 100 children are among 311 civilians killed. Many survivors are enduring the winter in makeshift tents with poor hygiene. And that Turkish organization accuses the Syrian government and its Russian allies of bombing markets, mosques, schools, health centers, and water treatment plants. Well, Sarah Kayali is the Syria researcher at Human Rights Watch, and she joins us now on Skype from Amman in Jordan. Sarah, let's start with the situation on the ground in Idlib at the moment. The ceasefire is effectively over. So how many people are now left caught up in the fighting there?
Currently in Idlib, we have over 4 million people, the larger portion of them civilians, who are essentially trapped in northwest Syria in Idlib governorate, between the Turkish-blocked border and relentless bombardment from the Syrian-Russian military alliance. All of their lives right now are at risk.
Sarah, I also am curious because we've seen these huge population movements since this latest offensive began, people moving towards the Turkish border. How are people coping with winter conditions there?
I mean, the humanitarian situation in Idlib is really dire. Since December 1st, you have 350,000 people who've moved north as a result of the Syrian-Russian military offensive. And although humanitarian organizations are scaling up their operations, they simply can't keep up with the demands. So you have families that are out in the open, in the middle of freezing weather, no tents, no shelter, no food. People are starving to death in this governorate. If they're not being bombed, they're dying because they're hungry.
Sarah, I remember the amount of and access to cross-border aid in that region was slashed in order to get that resolution through the Security Council. So what's been the impact on the ground as a result of that?
In terms of Idlib, the good thing is that the two border crossings where aid is coming into Idlib have survived, even though they've only survived for 6 months. So we don't know what's going to be happening in 6 months. But we do know that the Iraqi border crossing, al-Yarubiya, which goes to northeast Syria, has been slashed, resulting in decreased humanitarian aid to around 1.5 million people who are in northeast Syria. The slashing of this resolution essentially is a clear signal to the international community that in 6 months, the same crisis could be exacerbated in Idlib.
Sarah, there's already a UN investigation going on into whether war crimes have been committed in Idlib and broadly in Syria throughout the war. These latest airstrikes that we've been talking about hit a market. In your opinion, are war crimes ongoing there?
In Human Rights Watch's assessment, yes, it's likely that many of these attacks on protected civilian infrastructure, where there's large civilian presence and no real military target, are likely to be war crimes. We've documented these attacks on displacement centers, on schools and hospitals, and it seems that the pattern has not stopped.
Sarah, you've been covering this for some time, and it's been years and years of war now. Where do we go from here for the people of Idlib?
I think this is the question that needs to be asked. We have 4 million people who are relying on us to do something to protect them. We've raised this countless times. The Syrian-Russian military alliance has not paid heed. Turkey has not opened its border to people fleeing the violence. This is it. This is the moment of truth. And unless something changes drastically on the ground, it's likely that we're going to be seeing this tragedy unfold before our very eyes. And we will be held responsible for the deaths of millions of civilians.
Sarah Kayali there, the Syria researcher at Human Rights Watch. Thank you for joining us on Al Jazeera, Sarah.
Thank you.